44 years. Think about that. Over 4 decades now, the Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race has welcomed in the month of March for its fans, its mushers, and its dogs. As if the calendar year pauses for these 2 weeks. April isn't possible without a Red Lantern winner. The river won't melt, the winds won't stop, and spring won't arrive until the final team reaches that arch. And in true Iditarod flair, 2015, after a move of the start to Fairbanks because of a lack of snow on the Alaska Range, the easier, softer way became a moment of be careful what you ask for. 40 to 50 below for the first several days of the race, proving once again that Mother Nature is the great equalizer, and she has fangs and a really bad sense of humor. And here we go again. With uncertain trail conditions, uncertain weather forecasts, and unknown obstacles ahead, this Iditarod has the potential of all the others to be unforgettable, hitting squarely the allure of this race for so many.
I love dogs. I love being in the outdoors, and combining that relationship into the race form. I've always been competitive. It just seemed to kind of work.
When you find something that you love as much as this, and the sled dogs just being who they are, I think it's a happy person that has something to be passionate about.
Dallas Seavey, for the 3rd time in 4 years, became a champion. Only the 7th musher to win the race 3 times. Still hungry, still focused, but deflecting the bullseye.
I think the bullseye's on first place. You know, that's what everybody's focusing on, I would assume. I don't think it's really on a person. So when you have somebody like Doug Swingley or Lance occupying that position, then it appears as though the bullseye's on them, but it really, everybody's still gunning for first. That's what they're going for. And that's what I'm going for. I'm shooting for the same target everybody else is, the fastest possible Iditarod.
For decades, this race has welcomed dynasties. Swenson, Butcher, Boozer, Swingley, King, and Mackey. And now, some may not want to admit it, but this decade is being striped by Seavey. Mitch, the only musher not named Dallas to win it in the last 4 years. But his last name, as we all know, is Seavey.
I don't think about him. That's the best way to beat him, I think, is focus on my dog team. I obviously would love to beat Dallas Seavey. I think that most people out there would love to beat Dallas Seavey. Anyone wants to beat the guy who continues to win. But yeah, I respect the guy. He's a darn good dog musher, but he's beatable. Everybody's beatable. And so I'm going to go out and run my race, and hopefully it puts me right up there towards the end, battling for first place with Dallas.
So I don't consider this a race against everybody, against Dallas Seavey. Don't get me wrong, I wish him well, I do, but I don't wish him another Iditarod win for a while.
Somebody's got to do it. I won't do it. A lot of bad things would have to happen to a lot of good people if I won, but I don't want to sell my dog team short. They're good, they're nice dogs, but you know, there's not, they're young and inexperienced yet, but they'll get there, and I just, you know, want to keep improving and keep doing the best I can.
I feel that unless one truly and honestly tries to win with everything I have, I'm not really experiencing the sport. When I, maybe decades on, if I'm, you know, not trying to be competitive, I'll find other goals and other reasons to race. But as of now, I can only fully experience this whole thing year-round if my goal is to win that Iditarod race.
Winning the Iditarod would be everything to me, you know. That's been the dream. That's what our whole life is put towards, you know. We put every penny we've got into the dogs. We put every minute we have into the dogs and into the kennel, and our whole lives are based around what happens here at Stump Jump and Kennel. So definitely a win would be like the ultimate thing for our lives, you know. It'd be amazing.
It's a huge field, over 80 teams, 17 rookies, and 5 countries represented. It's a cultural experience on a trail traveled by many cultures. And for most, winning is just a dream.
And every Iditarod musher on the first day of the Iditarod thinks their team is going to win. But it doesn't take too long before reality sets in.
Can this team win upcoming race? Probably not, just because of their age. But next year, this team is going to be very, very good. So I'm excited. We got a good group, half of veterans, a lot of them been to Nome, and we got a nice group of 2.5, 3-year-olds.
Of course, everybody dreams about winning the Iditarod, but it's not just the dream. You have to engage the other half of your brain, which is like sort of logical Jody. And when logical Jody looks at the reality of winning the Iditarod, I mean, my Lord, I'm up against the best mushers in the world. You know, Ali Zirkle and Jeff King and John Baker, and the list goes on and on of people who I genuinely admire and respect, you know, because I understand how hard they work and what they've accomplished. And so it really intellectually, I recognize that it's highly unlikely I'm going to win the Iditarod against people like that. And the only way it's possible is to work harder and harder and harder and harder, which is what they did to get where they are.
I want to win it with this next breed, the next group of dogs. So 5 years. I mean, if Lance can set it at 5 years, I can set it at 5 years. You know, nothing against Lance.
Win, lose, or draw, the attraction is this state and the ability to travel its spine by dog team through storm, over mountains, and on a frozen sea. There is nothing like the Iditarod.
No, I run dogs because I love being out there with sled dogs and being in Alaska and just the endurance of it and being out there and camping and everything. So I run dogs because I love the sport of dog mushing and everything. And then Iditarod is just a way to, I guess that I like having goals too. So it's a goal to see how well you can do in that. And just like with anything that's worth putting time into, you gotta want it.
You know, a lot of people that are with the breed are running their dogs not necessarily to be competitive, but because they love the sport, they love being outside with their dogs, and they love the breed. And so there have been, you know, Siberian mushers, and I would include myself in this, that are running Iditarod not to win it, but just to, you know, be out there on the trail with the dogs. It's a pretty incredible experience to travel 1,000 miles with your buddies.
Yeah, we always want to do it better and better, but for me, the joy is running a team, you know, throughout the year of training, perfecting that team, and then getting them on the race and trying to run a perfect race. And whether you win by 2 minutes or 4 hours, if that's the perfect race for that team, that's what I enjoy, the act of actually racing. It's not after the race is over, phew, that was miserable, then I can look back, but we finished with 16 dogs, or but we won. I enjoy actually racing.
For the rookies, their eyes are wide open. Some are more experienced than others.
On my first Iditarod, you know, I didn't really feel the pride until I signed up. So, you know, it's kind of a big deal, bigger than I thought it would be.
My expectations for Iditarod are just to get out there, see the country. I have some experience running 1,000-mile races, so I think that'll help me for sure. I don't have any grand illusions of winning this year. But I would like to do good. I would like to do well. I think we have a really good dog team, experienced dog team that can do pretty well on Iditarod. And I'm not just going to sit back and go for Red Lantern this year.
I would, well, like to finish, but I really just want to be able to finish well with healthy, happy dogs. I mean, I'd like to not get the Red Lantern, but I don't want to set my goals too high and then be sorely disappointed. And
you know, you work for so long in the sport. I think any musher that's been in it, you know, even just a year, number one, if you're in it for even like 6 months, you're like, you know everything about it. Like, I'm gonna do Iditarod. But after 10 years, you really are getting a little excited and stoked about it. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. My family from Ohio is coming up for it, which is going to be pretty crazy.
I think I'll be helping to improve the economy of Nome if I get there. Quite markedly.
And for some, it's another attempt unfinished business and the chance to become part of an exclusive club.
I always knew I'd come back. I think it took me longer to come back than I thought. But yeah, it was always unfinished business. I always knew I'd come back, and it wasn't a difficult decision to come back at all. It sometimes gets into you for some reason. I don't quite know why. I kind of wish it hadn't really. It's an expensive hobby.
Relationships have been galvanized for the months and years leading up to the start of this race. And in many cases, the finish line becomes a great goal, but also an end of an era.
No, it's a really huge accomplishment. I get there and I'm like, hey, I made it. I didn't have any, problems with my insulin. I'm still on my 2 feet and hoping that it's not a dream and it's actually, live, and obviously it is. And it's a little sad for me, both at the finish line. I'm sad and happy. I'm happy that I'm done. I was able to achieve what I set out to do, and it's sad because you probably will not make that run again with the same group of dogs.
The images are breathtaking. Dog teams traveling across their promised land, almost indigenous creatures in this country. They've become a beacon for a different time and a reminder that ways of today aren't always better. And in its simplest form, you find romance.
I would say it's a romantic experience. Yeah, I'm totally enamored with the northern lifestyle and sparkles on the snow and like the immense satisfaction you get from allowing these athletes to do what they were born to do. Like, it just gives me great pleasure to facilitate that in the dogs, and and have the aurora overhead and moonlit nights. Like, it's fantastical.
I think once you see their enthusiasm and see their joy, you just can't help but want to do it.
The dogs, for me, it's not just something like a wilderness thing or a bucket list thing. It's always been about the dogs. I've had dogs, husky type dogs, Siberians and Malamutes in the UK since 1988. And that was what fueled my interest in Alaska and the races over here and everything else. So it's always been about the dogs.
For the 44th time, teams will hook up and head out into the great unknown. The Alaskan wilderness will offer them great highs and great lows. One team will be crowned champion. Most will never look at life the same. Nothing short of an epic journey. It's Alaska's Iditarod, pure, genuine, and one of a kind. It's time to head for Nome.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends from around the world, good morning and welcome to the ceremonial start of Iditarod 24, the last great race on Earth.
March 5th, the ceremonial start in Anchorage. Snow had to be trucked in, a shortened run, normally 11 miles, now 3. But the smiles and the sounds were the same.
Today is an easy day, especially given that it's 3 miles. We're gonna blaze around the corner and be done.
It feels good. It's good to know that you're alive and you're able to do this.
This is kind of nice that we're starting down here, I think.
Last year I had a lot more butterflies this time as my first year around, but this year I kind of know what to expect. 3 miles isn't too long, so dogs should be able to handle the distance. We're excited, we're good, it'll be fun, and this is always a fun day for friends, family, and to see all the fans and everyone out. It's a great event, and really glad to be part of it.
It'll be a diverse trail, areas with just ice and rock and other places with deep snow.
The mantra for this year is how slow can you go? So I'm bringing my tent. For the first time in my Iditarod career, I actually have a tent that I can camp in, and it'll be a fun trip.
How can you not be nervous? I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, but today will be fun as well.
We're going to want to, especially today and then tomorrow, keep them toned down. We're going to use a drag pad, drag mat. There's a bunch of different names for it. It's an old snowmobile track where we put a lot of studs, and today I'll probably be on it with both feet, 210 pounds. Even lifting up on the handlebar some to get the dogs just relaxed.
Like always, 4th Avenue is lined with fans enjoying Alaska's greatest sporting event, but also enjoying the view through a window pointed to the state's past and pioneer spirit.
It feels really strange and special, but it's fun.
The honorary musher, Joanne Potts, involved with the race since 1975. She's a legend in her own way, and along with the other Iditariders who have purchased space in the sleds, she will enjoy the short ride. Saturday comes and goes, and soon the attention will turn to the next 1,000 miles. The restart 70 miles away in Willow. And can anyone beat Dallas Seavey? This is Willow, north of Anchorage. It's the official start line for Iditarod 44. You will find nerves here. You will see mushers packing and repacking their sleds for the final time.
It feels great now that I've gotten over all my fears. That's a lie.
Butterflies?
Oh, for sure. Yep. It brings back a lot of childhood memories of watching my dad and my grandpa race.
Excited to see the trail and see that part of Alaska. I haven't seen any of it. I've been to Finger Lake, so that's everything beyond that is all new territory for me.
For some of the others, they will hide the nerves well, but they know when they leave that chute, they will spend the next 9 to 15 days on a trail of unknowns and sure to come hardships.
Yeah, every year Iditarod will throw something different at you, Mother Nature will, and so hopefully I get better every year by doing something different. Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a rough trail, but you can't do anything about it, so you might as well just prepare for it.
For the contenders, they will already deploy their strategies. Most will talk of a conservative approach, riding the brake, keep the speed down. Few will stick to that plan.
There's a reason I signed up late this year, is to try to hold back. And it's the CV method. We've been studying them.
I feel like it's been proven that going out a little bit conservative and having some energy left at the end is the key to this race.
These dogs did so well on the quest, and we didn't press them as hard as potentially we could have. So they came off of that race extremely happy, extremely fit, and right now they're really chomping at the bit to go do something else.
There's so many unknowns, so many variables that we know are going to come at us pretty hard and fast here in the next couple days that it's hard to be too routine about it. Do I have the things I need to be prepared for that? Have I done the training I need to be prepared for that? So that's kind of what's going through our mind at this point as we look forward to 1,000 miles of question marks.
I'm trying to build a team that can go like a banshee at the end. That's my strategy.
When the mushers depart Willow Lake, they enter the Yentna and Skwentna rivers. It's Partyville. Thousands of people enjoy this sunny winter afternoon with campfires, food, and beverages. The teams make their way through this gauntlet of partygoers and will enjoy the laid-back feel of this afternoon.
And if you don't mind signing a couple of volunteer posters while they check your dogs.
This is Yentna Station, the first of 21 checkpoints on the trail.
I have 2 in the sled. Yeah, 16? Yes. Okay.
53 miles into the race. Here the racers leave their bibs, will sign posters, and move down the trail.
It's hard and fast, so I'm resting 2 dogs in the sled.
There you go. Yeah, dogs are doing good. My feet will be getting sore from standing on the brake, that's for sure.
We're going to rest here for a couple hours and then head on through Skwentna and camp again. Planning on doing a lot of camping the first part, get them on a good schedule.
That is Denali, North America's tallest peak at 20,310 feet above sea level. Eye candy for these teams as darkness descends on the first night of the trail. And there are obvious examples of warming conditions and another non-typical winter in Alaska. The teams will travel the first 70-plus miles on rivers, but soon they begin the climb into the Alaska Range. Finger Lake being the front porch, and when they reach Puntilla Lake near Rainy Pass, the teams will be traveling to the highest point on the trail. From Roan, they travel to Nikolai, the beginning of the interior, onto McGrath and Takotna. It's an even year, which means the teams are on the northern route, and at Ophir they travel to Cripple and reach the Yukon River at Ruby. Down the river they go, departing at Keltag, and then the run to Unalakleet and the imposing Bering Sea coast. In all, it's 1,000 miles of diverse Arctic landscapes, changing cultures, and the finish line in Nome. "83 miles into the race, and the party continues in Squentna, a scene out of a bluegrass festival. Katil Ratan is the first in.
Welcome to Squentna! Oh, right here. What's up? I'm going to take a long break here.
All righty, good to hear it. You're in at 9:06. All right.
Squentna Checkpoint is a former homestead of the late Joe Dealey and his wife Norma. Both were original volunteers in this race. Norma, the lifeblood of the early days in this trail, passed away a few days after the leaders would hit this checkpoint.
The trail is really hard, so I'm wondering how far to go at a time, just because how hard the trail is.
Dogs were responding well to the command, so you could kind of steer them away from the ice. But no, it's hard and fast, just standing on the brake the whole way. Try to keep them slowed down, especially in this heat. You can really zap a team pretty quickly.
Camping a few miles past the checkpoint of Squentna, Pete Kaiser and Lance Mackey.
Yeah, a little bit crusty there on the river, but I think that's kind of what we expected. A lot of standing on the drag and wearing your studs out.
Dogs are great. I'm not bringing a jalopy team here. Yeah, the team is very much capable of some very fantastic showings, whether it's first or 41st. If we don't have a good run this year, it won't be the dogs' fault.
This is Finger Lake, the doorstep to the Alaska Range. Cloaked in darkness, one of the great vistas on the trail is not in view. But Nicholas Petit, wearing bib number 12, is the first to arrive at 3:34 Monday morning.
It's not a matter of being in front, it's a matter of separating my dogs from all the other dogs. I don't want my dogs to be hanging out with a bunch of dogs that may or may not be well trained. Possibility of fights and injuries and whatever else. And when we get to Finger Lake and I tell them to park and they jump over the straw bale, every one of them jumps over the straw bale and goes out to the outshoot. And you think, well, they're not quite tired yet. I still made them lay on straw for about 20 minutes, but then we left.
Whoa.
Hugh Neff was second in. He had hoped to play it conservatively. The 70th team to start is now in Finger with 83 teams behind him.
Well, I think a lot of mushers are learning, like we all do from the people that are successful, that you can't do these monster runs all the time. You can do a few of them, but realistically, you've got to, do the Jeff King method and sort of ping off of people.
123 miles into the 44th Iditarod, and already nearly 100 miles separates teams when the sun comes up. There are teams headed for Puntilla Lake, and for those resting at Finger Lake, they are content.
This is one of the best parts of the trip, coming through the mountains up here. I mean, the scenery's gorgeous and everything else. It's a little more mogully than it was the last time I came through here, but every year's got its own changes and everything.
You get excited about going through these areas? What's it like?
No, I'll deal with it when I'm there.
You don't think about it at all?
No.
Does it make you anxious or nervous at all?
No. Robert just told me couldn't sleep. He was laying thinking about it, but I don't think about it.
Yeah, it could be trouble. Last time I tipped over. Then I lost my feeding bag and the bowls, everything.
I got all 16 dogs for the first time ever leaving here, so that's pretty nice. And there's a couple barking, so that's nice too. Here we go.
It's a 30-mile run up to Puntilla Lake and the Rainy Pass checkpoint. Halfway in between, the Happy River Steps, a series of 3 drops that the mushers have to contend with. When there is a lot of snow in this area, the traveling seems easier.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little busy in Rainy Pass today. It's a little bit peaceful here. I think the dogs will sleep better than listening to airplanes.
How are the dogs doing?
Good. Good. I stopped them at 7 hours, so I think that's kind of nice. 7-hour run, and then we'll probably go another 7-hour run after this.
I'm content. I stay, my hands are decent, dogs are eating. We got snow. It's not all bad.
8:22 Monday morning and Nicholas Petit is rolling into Rainy Pass checkpoint. He's the leader, but he'll take a long rest before going on.
We're gonna hang out here in the sun.
It's almost 10 o'clock and we only have one team in here, and this is a little unusual because in the past few years what's happened is we've had teams actually leave by this point. The fact that teams are in here later in the day can mean a couple of things. One, overall people have decided to be more cautious at the beginning of the race. It also could mean that they're being more conservative because they're aiming on taking their 24-hour farther up the trail.
And the 15th musher to leave Willow 2 hours after Nick Petit, the two-time defending champion Dallas Seavey, arrives.
That was good. You know, it's probably the best I've seen it. Probably mostly because I was not 50th through it, you know. I think it's about as good as I've ever seen the steps. It's a good trail. It's probably going to deteriorate. You know, it's stuck together, but not very well.
Hugh Neff, the third team in, stays just 7 minutes and leaves the checkpoint. He's headed for Rainy Pass and Roan. He'll be the first to see the legendary Delzell Gorge.
I pretty much have dominated the quest in many respects over the years. I mean, I'm always up there. Yeah, Iditarod, you've got a lot more different personalities involved. A lot of guys that are my mentors, heroes, guys that I really look up to. And I'm at heart still a kid from Chicago, living the dream. And so I just got to realize that now is the moment I really need to take advantage because I ain't getting any younger.
We like to stop a lot, take a lot of little rests, get a lot of feed in the dogs, get a lot of vet care going, and just make sure that the team's 100% healthy coming into the 24, to where we got, you know, a brand new dog team when we leave there still.
It was a little slow. I had a dog cramp up, so I had to pack him, and he broke apart my zipper. So it was a bit of a challenge, and then I lost my clothes that were hanging on my handlebar, which luckily Jesse found. But yeah, it was exciting.
Well, maybe I learned not to go so fast in the start, and so we'll see what they do. But yeah, I'm sure some people are gonna go a long ways before they take the 24, and I don't know, it doesn't look like someone is gonna take it in Roan or Nikolai yet.
It'll be a 3 to 4 hour rest for many of the teams at Rainy Pass Checkpoint, 153 miles into the race.
I tell you, I don't have what it takes to be in the front of the race early on. Never have. If I'm in the front of a race early on, it is because there's absolutely nobody else showed up at the race. And that certainly wasn't the case this year.
Going through the steps, it was beautiful. The trail breakers did an awesome job setting the steps up and everything else. It was real nice when I came through there anyways, and coming up into the pass and everything. It was gorgeous.
Best I've ever seen coming over the mountain. You couldn't ask for better. I mean, when you can just glide down the steps and it's just like you're floating. Definitely contrasts from 2 years ago.
One of the nicer trails I've seen, probably the nicest from Finger to here. A little bit of moguls, but this section was really nice, way better than 2 years ago.
Steps were incredible. Yeah, they were perfect. No issues whatsoever. Probably the best I've ever seen them.
When these teams leave the checkpoint, they will begin a dramatic climb into the Alaska Range, summiting at Rainy Pass over 3,300 feet in elevation gain. It's a glorious cathedral, views that you could eat, mountains covered in white and spired in greatness. A senses-filling view that is interrupted by the little happy river, although today it's like a pesky sleeve-pulling little brother.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine, Mox. I'll carry you.
not all of the dogs wanted to cross on their own. Catherine Keith was happy to keep her team happy.
The dogs' booties are all wet and they needed to be changed anyway, and we were planning on camping for a few hours, so it's a good opportunity to dry out and let the dogs sort of reset.
Hardest part of the run for me is over, so I feel good. And this is always the hardest part. Once I'm through Rainy Pass, things seem to get better for me.
Brent Sass continues his camping ways. He stops his team to feed prior to the top of the pass.
It's a lot quieter here. It's a little bit crazy back there with all the planes landing and dog teams coming in and out. This is a little bit quieter, and I can probably get some sleep. The dogs will definitely get better sleep, and yeah. Plus the view's better even here.
Hugh Neff, the first to leave Puntilla Lake and the first to negotiate the Dalzell Gorge, is the first to reach Roan on the north side of the Alaska Range. 188 miles into the race, and Hugh will give his team a long rest here.
This trail's pretty crazy. It's like a hurricane went through there or something, so I wanted to do it in a safe time of day. And it was about a 8-hour run, I think, so that's not too bad. These guys can do 10 to 12, no problem.
With Neff safely in Roan, the others are now negotiating the Dalzell Gorge, a section of trail that creates fear and anxiety even in the most hardened Iditarod racer. The Iditarod trail breakers and support staff have to rebuild much of this trail each year, making it safe for teams to pass through.
Welcome.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
All right.
I'm wet. You're wet? I'm wet. There's a lot of water out there. 2 nice creek crossings.
What's your
So
bib,
from about
what's your
here
bib
down,
number?
I'm soaked. From up
Entertaining. Oh, somebody put a lot of time and effort into that gorge again.
By 7 o'clock Monday night, Roan is filling with dog teams. Lance Mackey's the first to leave the checkpoint. Dallas Seavey will go nearly an hour later.
Wasn't that bad though. I mean, the trail was a little bit technical, but I got through it. I can see that those trail breakers did a lot of work.
Darkness descends on the second night on the trail. There are now teams moving towards Nikolai and teams now negotiating the gorge in the dark.
Well, better than I thought. Still have 16 dogs. They're all looking good. The first 100 miles seemed like a really easy training run with a really crowded trail. But then at 4 a.m. today, I was up to my shins in water with 3 teams balled up, barking, a big knot of dogs, and water was pouring in both boots, and I thought, this is starting to feel like the Iditarod.
Where are you from? Coming out, everybody.
Yeah. Where are you from?
Appreciate it. From Eureka, Alaska, about 150 miles northwest of Fairbanks.
Yeah.
As Brent Sass arrives in Galena, Dallas Seavey is off his 8-hour rest in Ruby and is now on the river. Jeff King leaves 2 hours and 20 minutes after Dallas, making Jeff over 10 hours behind Seavey. But coming off his 24-hour rest, King should fly down the river.
I figured you were going to name this year's documentary The Perfect Race because I was having a perfect race. Everything I did was golden. And the speeds I was going, the time of day I was hitting places, absolutely golden.
The Yukon River, one of the longest rivers in the world. On the northern route, the teams are actually traveling down the river. They go up the river on the southern route. And as the sun sets on another day on the Iditarod Trail, things are about to turn tragic.
Straight up, straight up.
This is Nulato, mile 582 on the trail. Brent Sass is the first to reach the checkpoint. He declares his 8-hour rest and will shut his team down.
I made it.
You gonna stay with us?
Yeah, I am gonna stay here. What's that? Yeah, I was. It was a hot day in the sun. I'm staying. Okay. I'm proud of the dog team.
When Allie Zirkle arrives at 2:17 in the morning, what she is about to say will change the complexion of the 44th Iditarod.
Really bad. Really bad. What's going on? Someone tried to kill me with snow machine. Yeah.
A snow machiner on the trail allegedly terrorized Allie and her team, making several threats and attempts to hit her and her dogs with his machine. It was hoped to be a single incident because when Dallas Seavey arrived next, he was unscathed. But when Jeff King arrived behind Dallas, it was obvious that tragedy had hit the trail.
I'm good, I got big problems.
Okay, stay with us.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, big problems with dogs.
I was hit by a snow machine. I have one dead and several hurt in my trailer.
I sensed all in a split second that he was inches away from me, and milliseconds later see my dogs thrashing around like they've been squashed by a fly swatter or something. It took me several seconds to figure out what the hell had just happened.
Jeff's team had been hit from behind by the alleged assailant. 4 of his dogs were hit, and a dog named Nash was killed. The town of New Lotto was in shock, and the suspect was arrested in the morning and charged. But for Jeff and Allie, decisions had to be made in the face of great adversity.
Yellow stripe and a black stripe, and he freaking tried to kill me.
You know, basically a crime happened to me on the trail, and that my team and I were incredibly, assaulted, and I'm not real comfortable talking about that, but after that happened, it was a choice to either scratch, which was, I've never thought of scratching, and I had to sit down with a race official in Nulato and have her convince me that I probably shouldn't scratch, which has never happened to me before.
Okay, you guys ready? All right.
Allie came in pretty upset, and Jeff and those guys, and I felt terrible for all that, but I was leaving about the same time that they all came in. And Dallas came in at that point too, and they all stopped. And I took off, and Mitch blew through, and then Mitch was ahead of me, and I followed Mitch pretty much all the way into Caltech.
So leaving there was a bit of a hurdle, but yes, probably what I ended up deciding in my head, which was pretty screwy at that moment, was that I couldn't dwell on any of the negativities that had happened for the next 5 days. I decided that, and it's really hard because you're a human and all you want to do is think about negative things. But my dogs are intimately connected to me and my emotions. So I would actually allow myself to think about some negative stuff for a few minutes every hour, and then I'd have this thing where I'd go whoosh and make it go away. And so what I ended up doing, or deciding to do, was go camp in some of the most magnificent spots on the Iditarod Trail that I could find.
I can't imagine. I mean, I feel unfortunate and bummed out that 2 of my really good dogs got sick and I had to fly them home, and they'll be just fine, and they'll race again next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and they're some of my best friends, and I feel bummed that they're not with me racing and a little bit, almost persecuted. I can't imagine how Jeff feels, when he has that connection with those dogs and then they're gone, and you got someone where even if they live or even if they get to race again, there's nothing worse than seeing your dog in pain,
I couldn't get the movie Sophie's Choice out of my head. powerful. But he will be missed. And we will carry on.
That's where I'm comfortable. I would rather be nowhere than with my dogs out in the wilderness covering some of the most amazing country in the world. And I think no matter how negative your thoughts drift off to about the choices that humanity have made or what have you, you have to realize that you're in the greatest country in the world. You're able to do this sport that you love, and you have these dogs, and they're healthy and they're happy, and you're healthy and you're happy.
With the sun barely up, Mitch Seavey is the first off the Yukon River, and he wins the Bristol Bay Native Corporation Fish First Award, $2,000 and 25 pounds of Bristol Bay salmon. Mitch will take his 8-hour rest in Caltag.
Congratulations, Mitch.
Hi.
You are the first stop of the Yukon into Caltag, and on behalf of Bristol Bay Native Corporation, I wanted...
the first one here?
Yes, the first one here. Is that correct?
Sure.
You are. It's been a long night.
I'm completely amazed.
Yeah, well, you have made up some good time.
I thought I was several positions behind, but I haven't paid much attention either.
Well,
thank you.
As first off the river, I wanted to present to you on behalf of Bristol Bay Native Corporation and our 10,000 shareholders, what we call our Fish First Award. And it's $2,000 in cash, and when the salmon run this summer, we're going to get 25 pounds of fresh salmon fillets back to you.
Wonderful.
All right, well, congratulations.
We'll see.
Good luck on your way to Nome.
Brent Sass is still motoring Saturday morning, day 6 on the trail. He reaches Caltag in second place, 8:13 with 14 dogs, and true to his nature, he won't stay in the checkpoint. He loads the sled and heads down the trail 7 minutes after arriving. He is now in the lead of the race.
And the run was fine. We lost a little time on Mitch at that point, but overall I knew that my speed wasn't as high as theirs at that time. So it didn't bother me much because the dogs were still moving nice, and it was nice and cool.
Allie Zirkel is now in third place. Oftentimes she too doesn't stay in Caltag. One can only imagine what is going through her thoughts and brain just hours after the terror on the river. 9 minutes later, she leaves.
I don't know how I kept doing that. And in Nolado, I didn't have it. I don't know what kind of person I was there. I was not functioning on the correct plane, so I don't know how it got back, and I don't even really know if it got back completely. But it will.
Jeff King is also on the move. He's left Nolado. He's on the river, headed for Caltag.
There was just no reason the team I had couldn't and shouldn't go on. Quite frankly, most of the dogs, I don't think know what happened. Even the ones that got hit, that machine was going so fast. I'm not sure they made the connection. It's a beautiful team, a beautiful race. The people of Nolado that came to offer sympathy were extremely well received, and it felt very sincere.
Usually you're half asleep, or sometimes you do soak it all in for a split second and kind of pinch yourself and go, okay, but most of the time, I've grown up here, I take it for granted. It's inevitable, you just do. I've been here for 28 years, and so, but sometimes you do have to pinch yourself and say, okay, soak it in, this is pretty cool.
3 of the first 4 teams into Caltag go through. Dallas Seavey is next, 3 hours behind Sass.
There's also a tremendous amount of pressure. I only do the Iditarod. I don't race any other races. I put all our eggs in one little basket, and we plan on it being a very good little basket, you know, and this is our big race. So when you put all the pressure of an entire year and all the work and effort and all the numerous people's energy that's been put into this team, and one decision can make a 20 or 30 minute difference, which can make the difference of first and second.
Wade Mars is now in 5th place and will stop and rest in Kaltag. Mitch will be taking his 8-hour in Kaltag. It'll put him behind the leaders, but he should have a fresher team heading to the Bering Sea coast.
But these front mushers, they're not standing on their brakes, they're letting their dog team roll. And I was talking to, I think, Mitch about it, or Allie. I was talking to Allie about it. And she said, you know, there's a point in the race which you just got to let them go. Like, you can't keep holding them back. And I'm like, I've been standing on the brake the whole time holding them back, you know, just waiting.
I had the bigger, stronger team, and again, I just didn't have the leaders, and so I think I was traveling faster. I think I had a better, stronger team, and I think I wasted a lot of time fooling with leaders and being off the trail and being tangled up in the checkpoints and trying to give this leader a break and put a different leader up there, and they don't quite go the way I want, so switch somebody else up there, and on, and I wasted a ton of time on every run.
There are teams within striking range still in Nulato resting under a warm Alaskan sun.
Well, not a lot, but I get a handful of 3- and 4-year-olds that are really stepping up this year, which kind of always hope for. So they've kind of stepped up, and the core group I've had for quite a while, 5 or 6 years. So it's nice having the younger guys come in and do their part too.
My goal to come to Nome with happy dogs, so many I can. That's my goal. So we will see. And so long they is great. So I have some problem break the sled and something before Nikolai, but yeah, good.
I do, and I really hate seeing other people being able to do it and I can't. I was like, and you know, 2 years ago I got hurt and I couldn't get to villages, you know, and it was amazing how much the villages are a positive part of this whole experience.
It's a 90-mile run to Unalakleet, the longest stretch between checkpoints on this trail. The leaders will all break this run up, stopping and resting in different places. Allie stops prior to Tripod Cabin. Others will stay at the cabin or will go to Old Woman Cabin or beyond.
Figure out what the coast is, you know, get the latest conditions on the coast. That's one thing about blowing through all the checkpoints is I don't get any trail reports or anything because I'm not there long enough.
As the day progresses, the race for the Bering Sea coast heats up. This is called the Portage to Unalakleet, a shallow rise through forest and then through open tundra. For many, it's a favorite portion of this entire trail. It's also decided many championships. And almost for certain, this 90-mile stretch will dig a trench between the true contenders and those just dreaming of winning. Out of the darkness, 11:43 Saturday night, and it's Brent Sass reaching the coastal community of Unalakleet first. 714 miles into the race, and another award is doled out here. From Wells Fargo, it's called the Gold Coast Award.
Dates. Key to success.
Congratulations and welcome to Unalakleet.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we are honored to have you here. And in honor of your great determination on over here to Unalakleet and to the Bering Sea coast, you're the first musher over here. So in honor of Wells Fargo, we are presenting you with the 2016 Wells Fargo Gold Coast Award.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, thank you.
In addition to the trophy. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, your name will be permanently on there. You don't get to keep the trophy,
right,
but you do get to keep the gold.
Perfect. Well, my name on there is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so you get $3,500 in gold, Brent.
All right. I like that. Sweet.
So we'll give this to you at the finish.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Good luck for the race. Good luck for the rest of the way.
Yeah, I went by Old Woman Cabin there, and there's all kinds of people cheering, and the dogs like took off like
I mean, bar break style. I felt like we had been going about 5 miles an hour in the last bit of the sun, and the sun sort of went away at that point, and we went by that cabin, and the dogs just took off, and there was a new sense of excitement, and yeah, it was awesome.
Dallas Seavey is next in, 42 minutes behind Sass, and remarkably, Ali Zirkle is third in contention despite the hardship endured 150 miles prior to her arrival.
I can either assume that Brent's going to be able to do this the whole way and try to race him, or I can assume that my dad is going to keep this pace the whole way and try to race him. And I picked my dad to race against. I felt like it was far more likely that my dad would be able to keep doing exactly what he was doing all the way to the finish line. So I started kind of trying to position my team relative to my dad until I could corner him to where I could make a move that he couldn't.
But I like that sign. Thank you. You know, it's very humbling to be so supported by so many Alaskans that I felt somewhat empowered by a lot of people who met me in checkpoints, even though I didn't want to stay in checkpoints, who you know, kept saying, you know, stay strong and that kind of thing. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what they were really talking about. I knew it had to do with the assault and everything, but I hadn't talked to anyone about it, and I hadn't read anything about it, and I didn't know any kind of thing except in Unalakleet I asked Mark Nordman if the gentleman had been arrested, and he said yes, and that's all I really wanted to know.
The shakeup happens in Unalakleet. Mitch Seavey, who took his 8-hour rest in Caltech, stopped again before Unalakleet, and at 5:14 Sunday morning, after just a 12-minute stop, he leads the race out of Unalakleet and is in the front of Iditarod 44.
There's really not a huge benefit in a bigger team, especially when you have icy fast trail like it was. If we were dealing with 1.5 feet of new snow, I think it goes my way.
This is the first time I've stopped in Unalakleet in a couple years. It helped that I knew pretty much exactly what my dad was going to do. You know, my dad, I knew that he would be going through Unalakleet to Shack. And I needed to keep that little bit of a lead. It was very important that I have a little bit of a lead on my dad. And this was going to play out later. I had to find a place where I could do something that he couldn't, and a place where he couldn't immediately recover. And the only place that comes true is going into White Mountain. We have to corner him to where we can do a long enough run into White Mountain that we can make it and he can't, or at least he can't without losing some amount of speed.
11 minutes later, Dallas chases his dad. 4 minutes later, Brent Sass follows Dallas. And an hour later, Ali is back on the trail, and the lead pack is now 4 teams, and the race to the finish line is on. And once again, the sun is up. Yes, sun. And it's another day on the Iditarod Trail, and the leaders are getting close to Shaktoolik. 754 miles into the race, and Mitch Seavey is the first to arrive with 12 dogs. It's 11 minutes before 10 o'clock Monday morning. Dallas is just 10 minutes behind him.
9 dogs.
Hey, dogs.
Going through.
You're going through?
Yep, I need to grab my food bag.
But he doesn't stop. He heads out onto the sea ice. He is now in the lead.
There's got to be some advantage to staying in a checkpoint like this as opposed to getting out on that ice with all that wind.
Well, it's the right distance. I plan to come here and everything's here. I don't have to haul food and straw and everything to camp. I imagine he'll find a place out of the wind, so the advantage is, you know, he'll be all by his lonesome, which is kind of nice.
Brent Sass is now 58 minutes behind, and Zirkle now 2 hours and 24 minutes off the pace. They blow through Shaktoolik.
That was a pretty awesome moment. I mean, I will say it was like we're in the bottom of the 8th here, and I'm in this. Like I'm right here with these guys, and there's no one else around. Like it's me and them, and I got to do what I can do here.
Getting back to the alley that we know a little bit better. By the time I got onto thick of the western coast, but throughout this entire race, I will be truthful in saying that I never raced the last 400 miles. I never raced another dog team. I always raced my dog team. I never made a choice of how long to stay in a rest stop or a checkpoint that had anything to do with anything other than the dogs that I saw in front of me and myself.
Mitch rested 2 hours in shack. Dallas rested 2 hours at a shelter cabin. Brent Sass is now in the lead. And when Mitch passes that shelter cabin, Dallas is back on the move.
That knocked off 14 or so miles, a little bit shorter, and this is the beginning of just staying a little bit distance-wise ahead of him.
Can't let him leave me behind. All right, boys.
And at some point, he's going to have to do a run that's 14 miles farther than what I just did, and that's where he's going to affect the speed. So I need to, right now, what I'm thinking is I have to do these runs the right length and take the exact minimum rest. I can't let him afford to take enough extra rest to make up for that distance that he is behind me. I actually thought my dad would stay longer than he did in Shaktoolik, and so when I left the shelter cabin, my dad had just gone by, which kind of surprised me.
The race across the sea ice is on. 3 teams, Sass and 2 Seavies. Allie Zirkle finds a piece of unoccupied ice, not hard, and decides to enjoy the afternoon.
I don't know. I mean, it's pretty. Look at it. Most people wouldn't choose it. But it's sunny. If you get behind a windblock, it's really warm. You use a cooker. I mean, what are the minuses? Wind. What's another minus? Your water might be a little salty because you're on the ocean. What's another minus? Wind?
Dallas down to 9 dogs. Mitch has 12. Brent has 13. It's Sass who leaves the ice first and arrives in Koyuk. Mile 804 at 6:47 in the evening. His team needs a rest. And an hour and 16 minutes later, Brent gets a look at Dallas and then soon Mitch.
Instead of going 6 hours from Shaktoolik to Koyuk and then 14 hours from there to White Mountain, it made sense to even those runs out a little bit. So I made a decision on the fly just to, instead of camp in town, just go a couple more hours in camp and still make it to White Mountain in one more run. But that decision was being made as I was loading to go. I wasn't sure I was going to go. Yeah. And part of that again was the leaders. I was having leader issues coming across there, and that's why Dallas was ahead of me. I was fooling around with leaders. And
kind of was thinking as we went into Koyuk, it would be nice if my dad was in front of me. I was kind of wishing I had stopped and camped at the shelter cabin a little bit longer, let him have a 20-30 minute lead going into Koyuk, long enough that he would get bedded down. Because I really didn't think that he knew what we were going to do. I don't think it crossed his mind that I would go through Koyuk.
With Brent bedded down, both Seavies prepare to put the pressure on, and they are in Koyuk for just a few minutes.
Well, I know that I got to rest mine for another hour at least. I just came too far to just get up and go, and I'm pretty sure they're going to have to rest again before White Mountain, so it's a gamble, but in the end it would do me no good to pick up and leave right now for my dogs, so win, lose, or draw, I gotta wait another hour and see where the cards fall after that.
Sass rests for nearly 3 hours in Koyuk. The next run to Elam is 48 miles. This race could be setting up for one of the best finishes in Iditarod history.
Thank you. Hup, hup, hup. Good girl, Celia.
Both Dallas and Mitch will camp outside of Koyuk.
All right, come on. Hup, 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 hup.
Sass is now on the move. Mitch has stopped 18 miles out of Koyuk. Dallas has gone 2 miles farther and finds this shelter cabin.
doing almost 60-mile runs, 5 miles farther makes a big difference. 15 minutes less rest makes a huge difference. We are right on the edge. But it's the difference between going 9.5, which my dad and I were doing, and doing 8 miles an hour. And if either of our teams drop down to 8 miles an hour, which traditionally would be a fantastic speed to be moving up the coast, you're out of the game. And then once you come over the mountain here and get on this side, the wind pretty well just crushed us. You know, it's blowing.
That's my hope, is to go through Elam all right.
Nice to be out of the wind a little bit.
Is it windy down there?
Yeah, still a little bit windy down there.
I left that shelter cabin outside of Koyuk in a hurricane, and that was a little bit nerve-wracking. If there's any conditions where having a bigger team helps, it's when you're running into a 50-mile-an-hour headwind or side wind. I pulled out. I mean, all three of us must have been within 1.5 miles of each other and all on the move, which it's been a long time since 3 teams have been that close to the finish line.
It's 4 a.m. in Elam, 123 miles from the finish line, and just minutes separate 3 teams. Dallas Seavey, who has won 3 of the last 4 Iditarods, is in first, still with 9 dogs. His checkpoint efficiency is on display. 2 minutes later, he's gone, headed to White Mountain.
In and out as fast as possible. Okay, here's a vet book. I need to grab some food, though.
Yep.
All right, good. Thank you.
Brent Sass is 20 minutes behind Dallas. Mitch is in 3 minutes later. Both lose 6 minutes to Dallas in this checkpoint before they leave. But this race is far from decided.
Hey guys, let's go. Up, straight up, straight up.
I thought if I could get to White Mountain with a 20-minute lead, which I thought was doable, it would make it very, very hard for my dad to overcome that gap and then still be able to race me at the finish line.
Minutes count here as they push to their mandatory 8-hour rest in White Mountain. 77 miles from the finish line, the sun comes up on Monday morning as they enter day 8 on the trail, and Dallas Seavey remains in the lead.
9:48. 9.
Welcome, Dallas Seavey. 9:48.
Awesome.
And before Mitch Seavey can get the clock stopped at White Mountain, he drops to 39 minutes behind his son Dallas.
Nice job. Hey, Mitch Seavey. Hi. How you doing? Well.
There you go, Mitch.
10:27.
A race far from over, but the more athletic son will pull out all stops over the final 77 miles. And Brent Sass has fallen farther back. He's almost 2 hours behind Dallas when he reaches White Mountain.
Right here.
Right, I made it.
And how many dogs do you have here?
13.
After the 8-hour rest, some sleep and food and hydration for the teams, Dallas and Mitch prepare for a sprint to the finish line. 39 minutes separate father and son. Mitch, a 2-time winner. Dallas trying to become the 7th 4-time winner in the race's history. All before his 30th birthday. Dallas with 7 dogs, Mitch with 10, and history waiting at the finish line.
One more good run, and I'm going to try really, really hard not to think about the ramifications or the implications of each step along the way.
Dallas would have had to lose the race in order for me to win at that point. I'm not gonna just somehow outrun him by 45 minutes unless something goes wrong.
We are squarely in the Dallas Seavey era of the Iditarod. 4 wins in the last 5 years and another record finish. His father Mitch has won twice and has finished second now in 2 straight. Dallas, once a prodigy, is now one of the greats in this race's history. A tactician, Swingley-like at managing time, and a heart filled with desire like Mackie. It's a lethal combination. One of 7 now to win 4 Iditarods, and only one has won 5. There is something in a name, and when talking about this race, the name Seavey is as accomplished and great as any.
Scream and run down Cape Nome, see the lights of Nome, cruise on into the good city here, and each mile we get closer to Nome, it's that much more likely we're not going to have a problem. But I looked over my shoulder a lot from Cape Nome to finish. Once I was on Front Street, I let myself start thinking about, holy crap, we might just win a 4th Iditarod. I don't know that the stats and the numbers as far as, 4 wins, this puts me with this group of mushers. I don't get a lot of kicks out of that so much, but I do get kicks out of knowing that my team that we created is the best team in the world. And we said it at the beginning of this year's race, whoever wins this one has the best team in the world, because all the competition's here. Nobody's missing.
Yeah, they were smoking.
237.
Alice is the best dog racer there is right now. There's only one guy that's close. And then, I think I have the best dog team in the world. And there's another guy that's pretty close.
You brought your leader, 2 of the great dogs. I got little Reef up there. He's 4 years old and just won his 3rd Iditarod. 3 Iditarods in 4 years is pretty dang impressive. And I've got his brother, Tide, littermate.